Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the AMN International Live Show, Onwards and Upwards, everything a global healthcare worker needs to know about living and working in the United States. I'm your host, Danielle Friedman, sitting in Los Angeles, California. You can see behind me, the sun has just come up, so it's going to be a nice, good day. It's 7 a.m. over here, and I am very excited to be talking to you all about immigration today. So please let me know in the chat where you are watching from, and let me know if you have any immigration questions. We're here to answer, make sure you get all the information you need, give you all the updates. This is your one-stop spot to get all of this information. And if you're looking at my name and you're thinking, wait, that sounds kind of familiar, like Tanya Friedman. Well, I'm actually Tanya Friedman's daughter. So if you've been following along with the show for the last few years, she has been our regular host. She has passed the baton over to me, and I am so excited to share more with you about my journey to the United States, where I currently live in California, and share all about that experience. So without further ado, let's get started with our immigration Q&A, and let's get into it. Let's bring out our experts. Good morning, Chris. Good morning, Hannah.
Good morning.
Can you both give our viewers a quick background on why you're here today and why you're qualified to speak about immigration? You want to go first, Chris?
Sure. Yeah. Good morning, and thanks, Danielle. I'm here mainly because I'm here almost every third Friday of the month and have been for probably, 4 or 5 years. When Tanya first doing this, I would guess I've probably got more minutes logged in front of this camera than anybody other than a member of the Friedman family. But I've been working, actually just this week is 25 years since I became a licensed attorney here in the United States, oddly enough. And the vast majority of my work has been in healthcare-based immigration, in particular nursing immigration.
Well, congratulations, Chris. 25 years. That's quite an accomplishment.
Yeah. A bit of a bummer.
That's a good accomplishment. I think that's a good thing. That's a good thing. It makes you very seasoned and revered. So
yeah, I'm definitely seasoned. That's a polite way to put it.
We are very lucky to have you on our shows every week, and you've been doing this longer than me, so you've definitely got log time, but I'm catching up.
Right. Yeah, no, you're getting there, Danielle.
Hannah, would you like to go next?
Sure. My name is Hannah Harris. I am an attorney at Corporate Immigration Partners, and I specialize in healthcare. I actually work with Mike Hammond, who is also a frequent flyer with these Kinetic shows. So happy to be here. And I've been working in immigration for about 10 years, both as a paralegal first and then as an attorney. So specializing in healthcare and mostly RNs, but very excited to be here and answer some questions.
Well, thank you for joining us, Hannah. We are very excited to have you here and have your 10 years of experience. That's also quite a long time. Very impressive stuff. So let's get started. So Chris, can you give us an update on what happened this month? What came out?
Right. So the visa bulletin comes out most months, usually just a few days before we do this call. This one came out a little bit earlier. I think it's been out for about a week or maybe a week and a day. And from a visa bulletin standpoint, nothing dramatically happened. Most of the dates are basically the same that they've been. So the December visa bulletin, which was released last week, that visa bulletin, the November visa bulletin, and last month's October visa bulletin are all essentially the same. Which for most people on this call, they're looking at EB3, either the Philippines or EB3, the all other category. And that prior date is December 1st, 2021, which is essentially 2 years. And what that means is if your I-140 was filed prior to December of 2021, your case can move through to the next step in processing. The second step really, which is the interview at your embassy, whether it's in Manila or in London, England, or in one of the Gulf states or wherever it is around the world. If your prior date is before that date, you are allowed to move forward. If your prior date is after that, unfortunately, your case is held in abeyance until such time as the prior date moves more favorably, which I would expect will be happening in the early part of 2023. So that's sort of one headline. But then the other headline, Danielle, that I suspect is very important to everybody here is that we had the third version of the Healthcare Workforce Resilience Act, the HWRA. That was just introduced into Congress about 2 weeks ago. That is now just real basically the way that a bill moves through and can become law, and it's an open question whether this bill will become law, is it has to be introduced and passed in the House of Representatives. It has to be introduced and passed in the U.S. Senate. The Senate is the upper house, so it's a smaller number of congressional politicians there. The House of Representatives in America is what we call the lower house. There's many more members, a few hundred. Has to pass both of those, and then it would have to be signed into law by President Biden. President Biden would sign it into law, so that part's pretty easy. The challenge is getting it through the upper and lower houses here, the House and the Senate, and that's very difficult. Having said that, on the Senate side, we have immediately come out and we've got the bill introduced with 16 original co-sponsors, which is really exciting. And maybe more important is that of those co-sponsors, there are 8 Republicans and 8 Democrats. And for those of you who follow American politics, those are the 2 big political parties. They basically are the only 2 parties in the United States of any significance. And they are constantly fighting both with each other and with themselves, candidly, especially on the Republican side. And so for the fact that we're able to introduce a bill that has 8 Republicans and 8 Democrats on it, we're pretty excited about. We've got a companion bill in the House that actually has many more co-sponsors. It is up to, we're up to 28 already in that. That's the good news. The bad news is there's only a handful of Republicans. I think there's 4, maybe 3 or 4 Republicans, and the other 25 or so are all Democrats, which isn't as bipartisan as we would like it to be, because it will require confidence or support from both parties, both the Democrats and the Republicans, in order to get it passed. And so we're very excited. We've reached a milestone, which is getting that bill introduced into Congress. I was actually in D.C. Last week. We are walking the halls of Congress in order to try and convince folks to support this bill. And so especially if you are an executive with a hospital or healthcare facility, please contact me. If you are a nurse at these facilities and you think that your facility or employer could support this kind of bill, or at least wants to learn about this kind of bill, please also have them contact me. My email address is pretty easy to find, but you can find it at chris.masillo@muimmigration.com. If you Google me around, it shouldn't be very difficult to find that if you didn't catch it. And so that's the goal here over the next few weeks and months, is to just add more and more folks, senators and congressmen, to this bill.
Okay. All right. That was a good update. There is a lot to unpack in there. So let's take a couple of questions on the HWRA, the Healthcare Worker Resilience Act, because I see there's quite a lot of questions in the chat, and we got a lot of questions before about that. Can we take a step back and just explain what that bill would do? Chris, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, no, good question. So the bill is fairly short. It's about 6 or 7 pages long. You could read it. It probably wouldn't make much sense to anybody. But the bill that has been introduced, and it's the identical bill both in the House and the Senate, so either one of the bills you'll see is identical. What it essentially does is it says the next 25,000 nurses, and by the way, the next 15,000 physicians do not come under the visa bulletin. They immediately are current. So that's 25,000. In the United States, we probably bring in 6, 8, 10,000 nurses per year that are foreign educated and trained. Rough number, because the U.S. government data isn't great on this, and I'm trying to limit this just to folks who come through the conventional I-140 path. There are presumably many other nurses and physicians who come to the United States through other visa programs. So for instance, if I married a doctor from Italy, that Italian doctor would be able to come in through a marriage-based visa. So when I say that 6, 8, 10,000 number, that's exclusive of those. I'm just simply talking about the I-140. And so again, what it does is it says the next 25,000 nurses and physicians, which we estimate is about 3 years worth of visas, they all would be not subject to any sort of visa retrogression, regardless of what country they're from. And so this is particularly exciting for Indian nationals, both who are physicians and nurses who traditionally have had extraordinary difficulty getting employment-based green cards. So that's the big thing. There's a few other smaller bells or whistles in there, but I'm not sure they're all that important for this constituency.
Okay, so that's a good background. So I have a question from Mimi. Mimi asked, will this have a positive impact with regards to the visa bulletin? So it sounds like it won't really have any impact on the visa bulletin per se, because it won't change it. However, there will be the ability to recapture old unused visas. So there's going to be kind of like not an oversupply, but there's all of these old unused visas that will become available. Is that right? Yeah,
mechanically, that's what the bill does. Is it uses visas that should have been used by past immigrants into the United States, but for a variety of reasons, the main reason may just be bureaucratic inefficiency. They've been unused in past years. And so they're pulling those forward. When you're thinking about it, or when the listeners to this event are thinking about the visa bulletin, they can almost think of it as it would be EB1, EB2, EB3, EB4, EB5, and then EBHWRA, we could call it EBHWRA, and just everything would have a C in front of it.
Okay. That is very interesting information. When will we kind of have an answer or an update on that? Or is it just, we don't really know? We'll see.
Yeah. So until we can get, a few dozen senators to co-sponsor it, and until we can get many more House members, I don't think it will pass. But if we can, then I think it has a chance of passing. And so it really just comes down to how much support it gets. And the only way it gets support is through people calling their congressmen and calling their senators. And again, if you're an individual, that's the best thing you can do. Send emails, send social media messages, and make phone calls to the various, offices. If you go to, if you go to the actual congress.gov webpage and type in S3211, Healthcare Workforce Resilience Act, that'll get you the Senate one. And if you go to congress.gov and you type in HR 6205, you will see the House bill. And one of the tabs there says co-sponsors. If your co-sponsor, if your senator or congressman is already there, but feel free to send them a note and say thank you. More importantly, if your senator or congressman isn't there, please go ahead and tweet, message, email, phone call, carrier pigeon, whatever it takes, smoke signals, let them know that this would be an important bill. If you don't know who your representatives are, if you go to the AAIHR.com webpage and you scroll down there, you will see there is a link to essentially finding your congressional representative. So that's how you can find those folks. And so that's what you can do to help if you're interested in helping.
Okay. All right. Well, that is very good information, Chris. I saw we still have a lot of questions on this. I think we'll take maybe one more question and then we'll kind of shift back to our focus, which is the visa bulletin. Although I know this is a hot topic, it sounds like we're just kind of doing what we can and we're going to wait and see how it plays out. But we have a question from Kay Mendoza who says, if this bill is passed, how many visas are the companies expecting to be approved? And how long do you expect these visas to be approved in comparison to the current visa approval processing?
Yeah, so it would be 25,000 nurses, 15,000 doctors. All the dependents would be in addition to that. So spouses and children under 21 would also get visas. and it will be 3 years. If we don't use all the visas by 3 years, they would expire, but my expectation is we would.
Okay, thank you, Chris. And then one last question. There's a question from someone right above Kay that I think is a great question. Hassan Ghanem says, hello, thank you for your efforts. When Chris says the next 25,000 nurses, does that mean that it will not include the nurses stuck in the backlog?
No, they will. Those would be the first batch of the 25,000 would be any nurse who's currently pending a petition who's not current.
There we go.
Currently pending an interview, but not current. Yeah.
Okay, there we go. So good news for you, Hassan. So it will include first up the nurses who are already affected by the visa bulletin. So that is good news. Okay, thank you, Chris. Thank you for all your efforts and thank you for the update. I think we'll keep our fingers crossed, just like we keep our fingers crossed every month when the visa bulletin comes out. But that is exciting news and exciting progress. So keep up the good efforts. I know everybody is very eager to see what happens with this one. So Hannah, I want to turn to you. So for any nurses who might be watching the show for the first time, they might kind of feel like, can you help me read the visa bulletin? I kind of understand how to read it, kind of not. I hear current, not current. Can we maybe bring up that graphic of the visa bulletin? And can you explain how a nurse should be viewing this if they have a date before December 1, 2021 and a date after December 1, 2021 for the rest of the world and the Philippines? How would one do that?
So the visa bulletin can be kind of tricky. And so there's a couple of different charts that will show up. You can access the visa bulletin on the Department of State's website. There's two charts in particular that are relevant to the employment-based visas. The one that's most relevant is going to be the final action dates chart. And so what is on this chart are the employment-based categories. So that's listed on the left-hand side of the chart. And those are the different employment-based visa categories. So the one that's probably most relevant to those on the call today is going to be the EB3 category. And then across the top of the chart, there are different countries that are listed there. There's also a rest of world category. And so what you're looking at in this chart is the priority dates that are current. And so these dates in the chart are set by the Department of State. Every fiscal year, the Department of State and USCIS, they're allotted 140,000 visas that can be issued in the employment-based categories. And so what happens is when these categories get oversubscribed, that's when we see some retrogression in these dates. And so currently, the rest of world, the priority date is December 1st, 2021, same with Philippines. So what that means is that if you have a priority date, your I-140 was filed with USCIS, that date that it was filed is the priority date. So if your priority date is prior to December 1st, 2021, that means you can move through the process just like normal. Nothing's going to be kind of affecting your process. So, you'll move through the NVC stage. You'll be able to be scheduled for an interview. If your priority date is after the date that's in the visa bulletin, so after December 1st, 2021, then you're not going to be able to be scheduled for an interview yet at the embassy. So you'll have to wait until your priority date becomes current in the visa bulletin to move to that final stage. And the Department of State, every month they'll issue the visa bulletin. So as Chris had mentioned earlier, the December visa bulletin was issued, I believe, a week and a half ago. So that one will go into effect on December 1st. We're still right now under the November visa bulletin while we'll, get through the rest of the month. But that's kind of a little bit of an overview of how the visa bulletin works and what the dates are that are listed in there.
Okay, thank you, Hannah. So that's very helpful. So if you are a nurse who is watching now, you're looking at the visa bulletin and you're kind of trying to figure out, where do I land? What you need to focus on is your priority date, which is the date that your I-140 is filed, correct?
Yes, that's right.
So if I filed my I-140 today, November 17th, 2023, I would be what we consider not current because my date is after that December 1st, 2021 date, correct?
Correct, yep.
Okay, and I would wait until a visa appointment was available.
Yes.
That's how we read it. Okay.
Yep.
And how does one get a priority date? And are you still filing I-140 applications?
Yeah, so we're still filing. All the companies that I work with are still filing those I-140s. So there's no slowdown in filing of the I-140s. What the filing does is once you get to that step, so you have to do a couple things beforehand. So pass the NCLEX, you got to graduate from your RN program. But once you move into the next stage where you can file the I-140, filing that, the act of that I-140 petition being delivered to USCIS, that's what establishes your priority date. So whatever date that USCIS receives that petition in the mail, that's the date that you're going to be looking at to see kind of how you're going to move through this process and the timing piece.
Okay, so I think the key takeaway from what you just said is that we are still filing I-140 applications. So let's bring up that graphic with the steps of the green card. So if you are watching and you are trying to figure out where does retrogression affect me, you'll see there we've kind of distilled it down into 5 steps of how you do the green card consular process. So that is for any nurses who are outside of the United States. The first is pre-filing. So that's where you're doing your NCLEX, you're doing all of the stuff you need to do, getting a job offer, everything you need in order to file an immigrant petition. Your petitioner, who is your employer, will file your immigrant petition in step 2. And then you will move to step 3, which is the National Visa Center, where they will look at all of your documents. And then steps 4 and 5 are what are affected by retrogression. So this is where there might be a delay, where there might not be a visa appointment available to you. But I think the takeaway here is really steps 1 through 3 are happening as usual. So get your place in line. Because once you get that date, that's your priority date, and that's going to determine when you will be able to move through the process. And here at AMN International, we have Kinetics, which is direct hire. We have O'Grady Payton, which does staffing. And both of these companies have opportunities in every state. You'll see we have this graphic. We have every state covered all over the United States. We have lots of employers hiring right now, literally recruitment events every single week. So we are currently filing those I-140 petitions in mass numbers. So everybody else is getting their place in line. Don't wait for your chance to miss getting your place in line. If you are interested, you can apply at our website, which is amninternational.com or amnhealthcare.com/international. And our recruiters are all on hand. They are ready and waiting, both on the direct hire and on the staffing side. So don't delay, get your place in line. So let's take some more questions about the visa bulletin and retrogression and what's happening right now. So Chris, I see a question from Maria. Maria says, reading the wrong question. Maria says, how many days to become documentarily qualified after you submit all of your documents?
Yeah, it depends is the unfortunate reality. So there's no firm thing. It comes down to a variety of things, including the embassy you're pursuing to. Mm-hmm. If you're not current to some degree, it doesn't really matter. But that's the kind of question I'd probably ask you to push back to your attorney and ask them, depending on the embassy that you're at.
Okay, good information for Maria. So we have another question from Christine. Christine says, I'm an RN born in the Philippines and married to an EU citizen. Can I use my spouse's citizenship for my EB3 application? Hannah, you want to go ahead and take that one?
Yeah, so there is cross-chargeability. It's a bit more complicated. So I would definitely make sure that you're working with an attorney to bounce that off of them. But there is an option if you have a spouse that is in another country, if their priority date, might be earlier than yours, there is a ability to do cross-chargeability. However, rest of world is also the priority date is the same as it is in the Philippines. So it might not necessarily be a faster option to get you through unless the priority dates shift.
Okay, so as you'll hear us mention a lot of times on this show, rely on your attorney, rely on the experts. If you have questions, ask your recruiting company. If that's Kinetics and O'Grady Payton, we can help you move through that process, and your attorney will be there to help answer all of your questions as well. So we have another question from where was I? From Errol. Errol says, I'm a nurse working here in Abu Dhabi. My case is already at NBC. Is it wise to transfer my case to my home country, which is the Philippines? Because we notice there are delays for ID here in Abu Dhabi for applicants, even if they're current in their prevailing way or priority date. So I guess maybe two questions. One, can you even do that? And two, is it wise to transfer? So Chris, do you want to go ahead and take that one?
So not enough information to answer that question. So we'll try and just give you some general tips and rules of thumb. So number one, never do it yourself. You want to talk to Kinetics, your recruiter. You want to talk to your law firm. Potentially you want to talk to your employer as well. Never do this kind of switching of embassy appointments on yourself, which I guess begs the first question, which is yes, theoretically it is possible. Some of the things we look to, number one, maybe Abu Dhabi this week or this month or even this quarter is taking long and Manila's fast. I've been at this, like we said earlier, for 25 years. It may flip in a quarter, meaning that in February of this year, the Philippines might be backed up and Abu Dhabi might be really fast. So you don't want to just look at the last few weeks or indeed even the last few months. We want to take a longer view into that decision making. That's second. Third, what's your priority date? If your priority date is September of 2023 and you think you want to move back to the Philippines in the next few months, well, then that probably cuts in favor of going ahead and moving your appointment to the Philippines, because the reality is you're probably not going to be current in the next few months. On the other hand, if your priority date is current, we would almost never recommend you move that appointment, because there's almost no world where, even if the Philippines is moving much quicker than Abu Dhabi, that your appointment's going to happen any quicker than in Abu Dhabi. Because it's not immediate to switch your appointment to a new location. So again, keep everybody in the loop. Don't do it yourself. We're going to consider a number of things, some of which is your priority date and where you are. And the second is where your life plans are. You know, if you plan on being in Abu Dhabi for the next several years and you're not close to current, but you're in the NVC process, there's probably no need to move it, because again, in a year's time, the timing may be flipped and Abu Dhabi may be faster than Manila.
Okay, thank you, Chris. That's good advice for Errol. Errol, definitely consult with your attorney before you make any changes. So let's turn to the chat and let's see what questions we have. I see a lot of people watching. I see Dima from South Africa. Hi, Dima, from my home country. We have Mark, who's watching from the UK. Jay watching from the UK. Ruchika, who's an Indian nurse, Marlon from Trinidad and Tobago. We're just covering the whole world over here, everybody. So great to see everybody, and so glad everybody is watching along and hoping that this information is helpful for you. So let's take a couple of questions. I see Inva says, I'm an international student from Albania and I'm currently holding the F1 visa status. I will be graduating in May of 2024. I would like to know more about visa sponsorship. So I think we're going to take this question, Inva. This is a great question. And we're actually going to just generally answer what nurses can look out for in terms of sponsorship from both Kinetics and O'Grady Payton. So we're actually going to pull up our success path and walk through what the process looks like. I think there's a lot of information out there, which is amazing, but it can also be very confusing for an international nurse, especially when you're unsure, where do I get started? What steps am I going to have to take? So what we decided to do is distill it down into 7 easy steps. And if you've been watching our shows, you see me bring up the success path a lot because I think it is very helpful. You can also find it on our website if you are ever, confused or you want to figure out where am I in my processing. But essentially, these are 7 easy steps to take you through how to get to America. And again, that website is amnhealthcare.com/international. A lot of really good information there. You can also apply online. Our recruiters are on hand, ready and waiting for you. So let's get started. So the first step is going to be passing your NCLEX. So whether you are going to go with the direct hire or the staffing arm, you need to pass your NCLEX. That is your golden ticket. Once you have passed your NCLEX, we move to step 2, which is preparing for the interview. This is where you're going to interview with a potential employer. You're going to get a job offer at a place where you want to be, somewhere in the United States. We have positions all over the United States. on both the direct hire and the staffing side. Once you get that job offer, we will file that I-140. You will get that priority date. Remember, that is your place in line. That's your key date. And we will move to step 3, which is the visa framework. So this is where our team and your attorney will help you file for your green card. We're going to help you gather all the documents that you need. You're never going to be alone. We're going to show you exactly what you're going to need to do, when you're going to need to do it. Step 4 is going to be the licensing and credentialing. And this is where our team is going to help you get your license for the state that you will be going to. If there's any other credentialing needs that you have, we will help you through that process. Step 5 is the get ready game plan. This is when your visa has been approved. You're getting ready to come to the United States. You are reaching your American dream. You're doing your little happy dance because you're going to the airport. And we are going to be helping you with all of the things listed under step 5. So we're going to help you prepare for that transition, because as I know, and as many other immigrants know, it can be very exciting, but it can also be very scary. So we want to make sure that you are set up for success when you arrive. And then step 6, the arrival sequence. So this is where somebody from our team will be there to pick you up. They'll be there to show you around the new town, give you all the tips and tricks. We're going to help you with everything listed under step 6, housing, spousal support, schooling, all of that kind of good stuff. And step 7, enjoy and prosper. And that is really our goal for all of our international nurses, to come to America and enjoy and prosper. And nurses are doing it every day still. So, get your place in line, because when your priority date becomes current, you want to be able to get going. You want to be able to get moving. I know this process can be very long and seem very overwhelming, but you got to just get started doing the small steps, and then each step will lead to the next step and the next step. And at AMN, bless you.
Thank you.
Sneeze on the truth. I was going to say,
couldn't hit my camera quick enough.
At AMN International, we're here to help you.
I think I might need a nurse to keep my
exactly. Well, I think we have many watching.
Right.
Okay. Well, thank you for that question, Inba. I hope that was helpful. So let's take some more questions from the chat. So I see Jay is asking, hi, I'm near the DQ stage and I've just submitted my DS-260. Can I still travel to the US with my tourist visa? Does it affect negatively on my interview later on? Hannah, you want to take this one?
Sure. So I think you're probably going to get a little bit of a different answer depending on, who you talk to. But there's nothing that prohibits you from using the tourist visa, while your case is DQ'd at the NVC stage. I think that if you get closer to your interview, there's a chance that they might not they might catch that, or, it might affect your travel. But, for purposes of traveling when you're DQ'd and you're just waiting in line, there's nothing that prohibits you from doing that and using your tourist visa.
Okay. Thank you, Hannah. Good information for Jay. So we have a question from Jin from Korea, who says, I signed a contract with Penn State Health. I await the visa interview letter. Can I try an H-1B visa? So I think there are 2 parts to this question that I want to address. Before we kind of generally address getting an H-1B visa, I wanted to advise to Jin, if you already have a contract with an employer, you'll hear us say on the show that a contract is like a marriage. You are making a promise to that employer is making a promise to you. They are hoping that you are coming. You are hoping to be coming with them. And I would highly suggest that you continue on with that contract in good faith when you signed it. So if your employer is open to sponsoring a different type of immigrant visa, then that is something to definitely discuss with that employer. But just as a general suggestion to any nurses who might be watching this, really to think about that contract as a marriage and in good faith to follow through with that contract. But let's just take this question kind of generally and ask, is it possible to apply for an H-1B visa if you have an EB-3 application in process? So Chris, do you want to take this one?
Yeah. So, in terms of the H-1B visa, the question isn't about the nurse himself or herself. My guess is most of the nurses on this, watching this video, do from their half of the equation, qualify for the H-1B visa. Very broadly speaking, you need to be a nurse who has a bachelor's degree in nursing. So the challenge isn't you. The challenge is that actually very few companies in the United States, hospitals, are qualified to sponsor H-1B visas for nurses. So that's the first step. The second step, and it bears worth repeating, which is what Danielle just said, which is if you've got a contract, you've got a contract, and you unfortunately, you just can't move around. These employers and recruiters have, they've taken a lot of time and invested a lot of money in putting these programs together and getting you signed up. And so, you are going to have to stay with the organization you have in most instances. You have to talk to your recruiter about that if that's even conceivably possible. I'm not an employment attorney, so I can't answer the question as to whether your contract allows you or doesn't allow you certain rights or whatever. So that's the second point. I think, did I address all the points? Is there anything else you think, Danielle, off that question that I can address?
I guess just can you do it?
Yeah, I mean, if you have an H-1B and you are being sponsored by one of the rare employers who is qualified to sponsor H-1Bs, you can, but those are rare. And so in terms of the specific employer that you have, I can't say specifically if they can or they can't.
So I think what Chris said is worth echoing. So it is possible. However, there are very few employers in the U.S. that do sponsor an H-1B visa. With that said, on both the Kinetics direct hire and the O'Grady staffing side, we do have certain employers that may be able to sponsor that H-1B visa. So I would highly recommend, if you are interested, to apply online, amnhealthcare.com/international, and discuss with our recruiters if that might be an option for you. So I see a lot of questions in the chat asking about predictions about the visa bulletin. I know it's pretty hard to give predictions because who knows what the U.S. government will do, but do either of you have any kind of feelings or gauge or idea if we might see movement? I know we've kind of made some predictions in the past, light predictions, but Hannah, I see you kind of going like this, shaking your head. Do you have any kind of ideas for our viewers?
Well, I think, my perspective on it, and kind of from the visa bulletins that have been issued the past couple of months, I think that there's possibility that it'll move forward further into this fiscal year. I don't think that it's going to be jumping forward, in a dramatic sense. But I think there's definitely chance that we'll see slight forward movement, probably more on a quarterly basis. Obviously, it's very hard to predict what the Department of State is going to do and what priority dates they're going to be using. But, I think the January visa bulletin, when it's issued, mid-December, will be telling of, what we might be able to expect in the, coming months through the later quarters of this fiscal year.
Okay, thank you, Hannah. So yeah, I think that's kind of been the predictions that we've been talking about. If you've been tuning into these immigration updates that we do once a month, seems like we are really crossing our fingers for quarterly movement. So we will see in mid-December when the January visa bulletin comes out, if there will be any movement. Our fingers are crossed. I do want to say for any of our viewers, I see there are a lot of questions about predictions on the visa bulletin. I know everybody is really anxious about this, really hoping to see that movement. And that is completely understandable. We too are anxious, and we too hope to see that movement. I will say, you'll hear us say on the show a lot, control what you can control. So take into your hands what you can do. Pass your NCLEX, pass your English, interview with an employer, get a job offer, get that date in line, control what you can control so that when visa retrogression is lifted, which eventually it will be, this has happened before. We've all dealt with this before. And again, that's amnhealthcare.com/international. If you do want to apply at AMN International, we've dealt with retrogression before. We know how to handle it. Our seasoned attorneys know how to handle it. So you can rest assured that we will be able to guide you through that process. But that's going to take some work on your part to do everything that you can control and get you as far along in the process as you can, so that when there is a consulate interview available, you are ready to go. And that's going to be how you're going to reach your American dream. And again, if you want to look back at our success path, you can find that on our website. And that gives you every step that you need to take to be able to come to America and reach your American dream. So I see a question from Stephanie Hernandez. Stephanie says, what if your old priority date is recaptured? Will you be ahead of everybody's application? Chris, you want to take?
Depends on what that date is, but conceivably you will be ahead of, I don't know about everybody, but really your only question is whether you're current or not. Mm-hmm. So, but just for instance, if you're Filipino and your priority date was recaptured back to, 2020, well, then of course you'll be current and you should be getting your NVC visa appointment shortly because the priority date, of course, is December of 2021. If you're an Indian national and you have one of these really old priority dates from 2010 or something like that, yes, then you will be current and eligible to go. It works no different than any other priority date. The fact that it's recaptured isn't good or bad. It just is. That's your priority date.
Okay, so good news for you that you can recapture an old priority date. So that is good news. So if you are applying, make sure to mention to your recruiter that you have an old priority date that you want to recapture, and that could bring you current depending on when that date is. It's all going to just depend on that visa bulletin and where your priority date lies in terms of the dates that are current or not current. So let's see, we have a lot of people watching, which makes me so happy. We have EJ watching from the Philippines, Neil watching from Saudi Arabia, Daniel watching from Nigeria. Hello to you all. It's so great to have you all here. So let's see. So I see a couple of questions about premium processing and if that's still being done and if it's recommended. Hannah, do you want to explain also just what premium processing is, and then maybe you can take the question?
Sure. So
okay,
premium processing is an option that's available when you file an I-140 and you pay a little bit of an extra fee, and then USCIS has to make a decision on the I-140 in 15 days. Right now, I don't know that the effect of premium processing, there's not really going to be a big one, mainly because of the retrogression that we're seeing. So the normal, processing time for an I-140, I think right now is around 4 or 5 months, that's been posted on the USCIS website. But there's not going to be an overall effect for premium processing right now because of the retrogression. So some employers may premium process, but I don't know that there's an overall effect. I don't know if Chris has a different view on that from what he's seeing.
No, yeah, I'm with you, Hannah. I agree with you.
Okay, so we heard it here from the experts. Premium processing is not necessarily going to make a difference because, again, what matters right now is your priority date, which is the date your I-140 is filed, not when it's approved, but when it's filed. And that's how you get your place in line. And again, we have that 5 steps to the green card. Step 2 is the filing of that immigrant petition. That's how you get your priority date. That's how you get your place in line. You can continue with your processing to step 3, which is the National Visa Center. And affected by retrogression is steps 4 and 5 while you wait for a consulate interview. So that is good information for our viewers. So Chris, I'm seeing a follow-up question to the information we gave about the H-1B visa. Samuel is asking if your employer is capable, has what it takes to sponsor an H-1B, and he has initially sponsored an EB-3 already, would the employer have to cancel the initial EB-3 filing, or can you do both?
Wow, that's a very good question. Yeah. So the answer is you can do both. Some people get confused about this and they get a little too in the weeds. And the reality is this is a situation where less is more. Here's the real simple answer. You can have an H-1B, and at the same time, you can have an EB-3 going on at the exact same time. You're going to hear terms like intent and dual intent and all this, and all that's well and good. And if you want to learn all that, that's fine. You don't need to. All you need to know is you can have an H-1B and an EB-3 at the same time. One quick check, though. Your EB-3 and your H-1B ordinarily should be consistent in terms of the job duties and job descriptions. Here's why. Your H-1B is, if you're lucky enough to be sponsored by an H-1B employer, who you may be able to come in the United States as soon as the first quarter of next year, just after the new year. That H-1B job is premised on holding a bachelor's degree as the minimum requirement for that position. If you had an EB-3 filed for you a year ago, generally speaking, for many nursing jobs, that job was for a different job, and it was filed for something with an associate's degree. And so what your employer may need to do is file a second EB-3 and recapture that priority date that says that your new H-1B job, which may be in a different division, cohort, section of the hospital, that your old green card filing and your current H-1B are for the same position, because it is unrealistic that they would have an H-1B job here and then you would take a demotion to your EB-3 job, which only requires an associate's degree. It's a little complicated. The most important thing you can do is, if you have an H-1B and an EB-3 going the same room, is just simply ask the question to your recruiter and your lawyer and your employer, are my EB-3 and my H-1B comparable? And in most instances, if they're not, that's the employer's I know for our clients, we're in process of making sure that the H-1B petitions and the green card petitions are consistent. Takes a little bit of time, but we're doing it.
Well, that's why we have our seasoned expert attorneys to do that complicated stuff that for the rest of us just makes our head spin. So we're very thankful to our immigration attorneys that specialize in nursing immigration and really know what they're doing. So we work with Chris and we work with Hannah on the daily. We work with their firms, so we are in good hands. So if you're a kinetics or an O'Grady-Peyton nurse, you know that you are in good hands with seasoned experts. So I see a question from May de los Santos. May is asking, is kinetics accepting medical technologists for direct hire? So good news for you, May. We are accepting medical technologists for direct hire. So you can apply on our website, amnhealthcare.com/international, and our allied recruiter will be reaching out to you and she can discuss the availabilities with you. So that is good news for anybody who is an allied healthcare professional that might be interested in coming to the US. We are accepting those kinds of positions and we can help you. So I see a question from Yek Yek. Yek Yek was asking, hi Kinetics, I have a question. Currently waiting for the EB-3 visa interview now, priority date not current. Is it okay to apply for a TN visa while waiting, knowing that a TN visa has a non-immigrant intent? So kind of similar to the H-1B question, but now a TN question. So Hannah, is that possible to do?
So I would have to do a little more research on that specifically, but the TN visa is for Canadian citizens. So you can come in on a TN. It's a temporary visa that's available. There's some intent issues that surround that type of visa, so it makes it a little bit more complicated. But I would say talk to an attorney about it. The immigrant visa, if you're consular processing, it likely wouldn't be an issue, but that can be a little more complicated just because of the type of visa that the TN is and the type of intent that's involved there.
Okay, thank you, Hannah. That's good information. Always good to consult with your attorney if you have any questions. Chris, do you have anything to add on that TN visa question?
Yeah, I mean, I would reiterate what Hannah said, which is it is very much possible. It is complicated because of the consular process and the intent issue. We do them very regularly over here, but they need to be done correctly. And they need to be done with a timing component, which is why it's very important, as Hannah said, that you contact your immigration attorney. But if you do and you work closely with them, we do them quite frequently here.
Okay, great. Good information. So I see a couple of our viewers asking about an EAD. So I see Alina is asking, what is a compelling circumstances EAD and who is eligible to apply for it? So can you explain what an EAD is and who might be eligible for it? Just so our viewers understand. Hannah, you want to go ahead and take that one?
Sure. So an EAD is an employment authorization document. Typically, it's going to be available for someone that's in the US. It comes with certain statuses, or it's available if you have certain statuses. Probably the most frequent one that I see it with is, if you have a recent grad RN, you might get an OPT EAD for that 1 year after you graduate. Also, they're available if you file an I-485. There's a category where you can get an I-765, file the I-765, get an EAD that allows you to work. So the employment authorization document, depending on the category you're applying for, allows you to work in the US for the validity period on the card. And I'll bounce it to Chris. I have not specifically dealt with a compelling circumstances EAD. I don't know if Chris has in his seasoned experience, and might be able to offer some more specifics to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reality is compelling circumstances EADs are two things in my experience. One, very difficult, almost random based on the immigration official, and two, generally difficult to get. And so if you're banking on compelling circumstances, you're probably you're probably challenged. Having said that, check with your attorney. I mean, we sometimes say this for a lot of clients, like if money is not an issue for you, or at least it's a cost-effective approach, to some degree, you can go ahead and apply for that EAD, spend a little bit of money, put together the case. If it works, great. If it doesn't, a denial of an EAD is, other than the fact that it has to be disclosed on future immigration petitions, it's not really going to be a black mark against your ultimate ability to get an H-1B or a green card or anything like that. So on one hand, I'm negative when I say it's difficult to get. On the other hand, it's, again, other than cost, which is not insignificant, dollar cost, there's no real risk to your your long-term immigration goals.
Okay, thank you, Chris and Hannah, for that information about an EAD. So just for anybody who's watching, to clarify, I think that EAD will only really come into play if you are in the United States and you're filing for an adjustment of status. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, there's student EADs as well, asylum EADs. There's a few of them, but the adjustment of status is the most common one.
Okay, well, there we go. So we just have a couple of minutes left, so we'll take a couple more questions. I know we had lots of questions in the chat, so if your questions weren't answered, we are going to go through and hopefully answer as many as we can after the show. But we had a question from Supriya. Supriya says, can we bring parents in a tourist visa right before getting citizenship? Is that possible?
Right.
So, you want to take that?
You want me to take it? Yeah. So first, a couple of things. One, I know we often, or it's often said, we want to sponsor our parents for a tourist visa. In reality, that's not actually what's happening. Your parent, mom, dad, whomever, they have to qualify for the tourist visa on their own volition. One of the factors that may help or hurt is that you have a lawful status in the United States. You may be able to, if they want to visit for a month, you may be able to put forth evidence that you're going to, for instance, that's where their housing is going to be. They're going to stay with you, that you're going to, pay for their trip, maybe these kinds of things. So that's the first thing. Second thing is if your parents may get denied as well. And again, ultimately, other than the headache and cost of filing for the tourist visa, appearing at a U.S. embassy, the denial of a visitor's visa, it happens a lot, frankly. Not that I'm suggesting it's a great thing, but ultimately it generally won't have any long-term detriment to your immigration petition. Obviously, don't commit fraud and misrepresent facts, or have your parents commit fraud or misrepresent facts. If you're close to your U.S. citizenship, of course, and I think hopefully most people know this, but if not, this is good information. If you're a U.S. citizen, which generally speaking, you can become a U.S. citizen after 5 years in the United States, as a permanent resident. If you become a U.S. citizen, you're allowed to sponsor your parents for a green card. One last thing, and this is an important one, and this is the black letter part. Do not sponsor your parents for a tourist visa, intending for them to stick around here until such time as you're eligible to file for their green card. That's a no-no.
Interesting. Okay. Learn something new every day. That's good information. I'm sure for a lot of our nurses who might already be here or who are making plans to bring their parents once they do eventually get here. So good information. So I think we probably have time for one or two more questions. I see there's a question from Errol Drawn that echoes a couple of questions I saw in the chat. Errol says, I have friends here in Abu Dhabi who are already current in their priority dates and DQ'd as well, but have not received an ID from U.S. Embassy. They are worried that it might retrogress again and their priority dates will not be current anymore. Is that possible to be retrogressed again if your priority date is current? I saw that was a concern for a few nurses. Chris, I kind of see you shaking your head like this. Do you have any insight into that?
Yes, unfortunately, you have to be current when your case is moving through the NVC, and then you have to remain current when your visa appointment happens. And if you're not, then your case is held in abeyance until that happens.
So is it possible that your priority date will be current and you're DQ'd, and just because you haven't received an interview, you might be retrogressed again?
It is possible. I think Hannah and I both believe that the visa bulletin, you asked a predictions question a little earlier, Danielle, and I think everybody addressed it, but I think it bears worth repeating. Listen, none of us, myself, Hannah, you, Danielle, none of us have any insight or any certainty as to what the visa bulletin is going to be in February or April or June or anything like that. In fact, and I'll say this bluntly, anyone, lawyer, internet site, Reddit, whatever, who tells you they know where the visa bulletin is going to be is absolutely lying to you. They don't know. I am personal friends with the person at the State Department who publishes the visa bulletin, and I think even he would say that it's very difficult to predict where the visa bulletin is going. So that's the first thing. Anyone who predicts any visa bulletin future dates is frankly just lying to you and probably not to be trusted. Two, the thing that also I'd agree with what Hannah said earlier is the smart bet is that over the course of time, it will move forward, whether it moves month by month or 3 months by 1 month. What our experience is that it tends to pulse, which is it doesn't move a lot, and then it jumps forward a few months, and then it doesn't move a lot. And that's likely going to be the long-term thing. In terms of retrogressing the dates back such that you were current and now you're not current, that could happen. My experience is that really happens in the July, August, September timeframe. And so that's the time of the year it happens. I would be very surprised in the next 6 months if the Philippine EB3 or the all other countries EB3 retrogresses further back. I think the smart prediction is that it will, over the course of those 6 months, slowly move forward. That doesn't mean any particular month it will move forward by any particular pace.
All right. Well, I think that's a good place to end. We will cross our fingers that what Chris has said will come true, and we will meet back up here in 1 month to hear about the January visa bulletin. And we will hope that there will be movement. Hopefully we'll see some good updates on HWRA. If you missed what HWRA is, you can rewatch the beginning of the show. We spent a good amount of time going into that, but hopefully some good news there. But thank you to my expert guests, Chris and Hannah. You were both wonderful as usual. It was great to have you on, sharing your knowledge with our nurses. I know I learned a lot, so I'm sure our nurses learned a lot as well. So thank you for your time. If you were watching the show and you were inspired, I think now is the time to apply. Our website is amnhealthcare.com/international. We are taking applications for staffing and direct hire with O'Grady Payton and Kinetics. We have opportunities in every state. You can see our map up. Every single state is covered between direct hire and staffing. We have an opportunity for you. So get your place in line. Control what you can control and take your destiny into your own hands. The only way you're going to reach your American dream is if you do it yourself. You're going to rely on the help of your agency that you're going to be working with and your immigration attorney. But you really need to get started on that process yourself and get going on everything that you can do. So thank you for joining us here today. We're going to bring up our schedule of upcoming shows for those who will want to watch with us, especially next month. I'm sure everybody's going to want to tune into that. So on November 21st, we have our LaFora talk show. We're going to be talking about medications. I know that's a very interesting topic for a lot of RNs. What medications are different between their home countries and the US? On December 1st, we're going to have our annual career day. So we do this once a quarter. This is your chance to speed date with our current employers on both the staffing and the direct hire side. So we're going to have a few employers on. They're going to share all about themselves. They are located all over the US. They have amazing offerings for our nurses. So make sure to check that out. You can ask them questions and really consider that speed dating for yourself. On December 15th, we have the RN work benefits, how to pick an insurance plan. So we're going to be talking all about that. All right. And then we have our Kinetics College as usual every Monday at 6 a.m. Pacific with our partners, Aspire RN, Swoosh, 9.09er, and iPass. So make sure to check out those free classes every Monday at 6 a.m. Pacific. We also have our Kinetics initiatives. These are our initiatives that we share with our nurses. So we have a free English scholarship. If you have not passed your English exam, if you are a Kinetics nurse, we offer a free English scholarship to all Kinetics nurses. We have a $500 referral fee. So if you have any nurses that you know that have NCLEX, pay it forward, earn a little extra cash. You can refer them at kineticsusa.com/referral and avail yourself of that referral bonus. We can pull up that initiatives graphic again. We have our podcast, our Onwards and Upwards live show at 7 a.m. on Fridays. Make sure to check out the schedule. Our Kinetics College every Monday at 6 a.m. And we are hiring for allied needs. So if you are any one of these allied professionals and you want to apply, we are hiring. We have lots of employers all over the U.S. that are currently recruiting right now. So again, that's amnhealthcare.com/international. Our recruiters are on hand on both the staffing and the direct hire side. With AMN International, you have both options available to you, and our recruiters will help you figure out what is going to be the best fit for you. So thank you for joining us today, everybody. I'm Danielle Friedman, your host, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Danielle. Bye-bye.